March 1918, Belleau Wood, France. Corporal Daniel McCarthy moved through the shattered oak forest with his squad, Springfield rifle at the ready, expecting resistance from perhaps 50 yards out. They never heard the bolt cycle. They never saw the muzzle flash. The German machine gunners were 17 feet away when they opened fire, turning the narrow trench corridor into a kill box before McCarthy's rifle could track a single target. Esthano? The weapon that would change this equation was, by any conventional standard, obsolete. It was also the most devastating close-quarters weapon of the First World War. The problem facing the American Expeditionary Force in late 1917 was simple to state and nearly impossible to solve. Modern trench warfare had created a tactical environment that violated every assumption of infantry combat. Engagements happened at distances measured in yards, not hundreds of yards. Visibility was measured in seconds. The soldier who could deliver overwhelming firepower first, in a corridor 3 feet wide and shrouded in cordite smoke, would walk out alive. The Springfield M1903 rifle was a masterpiece of long-range accuracy, effective to 800 yards with a trained marksman. In a trench barely wider than a man's shoulders, that accuracy was irrelevant. You needed to hit a target you could not yet see, in conditions where aiming was impossible. The Colt M1911 pistol offered close-range stopping, but its 7-round magazine and single projectile per trigger pull meant that missing your first shot in close quarters was often your last mistake. The M1917 Browning automatic rifle would not enter service until September 1918. Too late for the spring offensive. French and British forces were developing specialized trench weapons, but production timelines stretched into 1919. The specification seemed impossible: deliver multiple projectiles per trigger pull, effective to 40 yards, reliable in mud and gas-contaminated environments, and available in quantity within 4 months. The solution came not from ordnance engineers or military procurement offices, but from a sporting goods catalog. John Browning's Model 1897 pump-action shotgun had been a commercial success since its introduction, used primarily for hunting waterfowl and defending frontier homesteads. General John Pershing's staff, desperate for any solution, requisitioned the weapon in February 1918. They approached the problem not as military strategists, but as pragmatists. Facing an engineering reality, they needed a weapon that could turn a narrow trench into a no-man's land for anyone approaching. The multi-layered technical challenge was formidable. First, the weapon needed to chamber and fire reliably when caked with the alkaline mud of the Western Front, which seized conventional bolt mechanisms within hours. Second, it needed to deliver sufficient stopping power through wool greatcoats and leather equipment at ranges where rifle bullets would overpenetrate without transferring energy. Third, it needed to cycle fast enough that a single soldier could engage multiple targets in the 3 to 7 seconds before enemy troops could close from ambush range to hand-to-hand distance. For the mud problem, the physics were straightforward. Any weapon with tight tolerances and enclosed mechanisms would fail when particulate matter exceeded 0.01 inches in diameter invaded the action. For the stopping power problem, the challenge was kinetic energy transfer. A single rifle bullet at close range would punch through a target, wasting most of its energy, while multiple lower velocity projectiles would deliver their full kinetic load. For the rapid engagement problem, the mathematics were unforgiving. A bolt-action rifle required 4 distinct motions and approximately 3 seconds between shots, while enemy troops could cover 30 feet in that time. The Winchester Repeating Arms Company, contracted to produce the weapons, understood they were not building hunting equipment. They were building a specialized tool for a tactical environment that had never existed in military history. The Winchester production team started with the action mechanism itself. The conventional approach to military firearms in 1918 favored enclosed bolt actions that protected the firing mechanism from environmental contamination. These produced cycle rates of 12 to 15 rounds per minute with trained operators. The physics worked against this design in trench conditions. Any gap narrow enough to exclude large particulate matter would also trap fine clay particles, creating an abrasive paste that abraded metal surfaces and increased friction coefficients beyond operational limits within hours. The Model 1897's external slide action presented the opposite engineering philosophy. The pump mechanism remained outside the receiver, exposed to contamination, but also easily cleared. The slide stroke was 6 inches. requiring 2.4 pounds of force. This produced a theoretical cycle rate of 30 to 40 rounds per minute with minimal training. This is roughly equivalent to the rate of fire of early Gatling guns, achieved by a single operator with a $20 sporting shotgun. Standard military rifles of the period weighed 9 to 10 pounds and measured 43 to 46 inches overall. The Model 1897 trench gun variant weighed 8 pounds 2 ounces and measured 41 inches with the 20-inch barrel. The weight reduction came from eliminating the heavy steel barrel typical of rifles designed for sustained fire. A shotgun barrel firing lower pressure shells could be thinner. The balance point sat 8 inches forward of the trigger compared to 11 inches on the Springfield, allowing faster target transition in confined spaces. The ammunition specifications were equally critical. The standard military load was the 12-gauge double-aught buckshot shell, containing 9 lead pellets, each .33 caliber, traveling at 1,200 feet per second. Each pellet carried approximately 250 foot-pounds of energy at muzzle, declining to 180 foot-pounds at 25 yards. A single trigger pull released 9 projectiles in a pattern that spread approximately 1 inch per yard of distance. At 15 yards, the pattern was 15 inches in diameter. At that range, a center mass aim point meant that all 9 pellets would strike a human torso, delivering a combined kinetic energy of approximately 1,650 foot-pounds. Standard rifle ammunition of the period delivered between 2,500 and 3,000 foot-pounds per projectile. But as a single point of impact, the effective wounding mechanism was the permanent cavity created by the projectile. The shotgun's mechanism was hydrostatic shock from multiple simultaneous impacts, overwhelming the body's ability to maintain blood pressure. The result was immediate incapacitation rather than delayed effect. The weapon's loading mechanism held 6 shells in a tubular magazine beneath the barrel. This gave 7 total rounds with 1 chambered. Reloading required approximately 1.2 seconds per shell, during which the weapon remained operational with remaining loaded round. By contrast, the Springfield's 5-round internal magazine required removing the rifle from firing position to reload via stripper clip. Now, let us examine the modifications made for military service. Winchester's standard sporting model featured a 30-inch barrel for hunting applications. The military contract specified a 20-inch barrel, reducing weight and overall length for trench work. The standard walnut stock was replaced with oil-finished American walnut. More resistant to moisture absorption, the magazine tube was fitted with a bayonet lug, though this addition was largely ceremonial, as using a bayonet on a pump-action shotgun created balance issues. The most distinctive modification was the perforated steel heat shield surrounding the barrel. This component served 3 purposes: protecting the operator's support hand from barrel heat during sustained firing, providing structural reinforcement to the relatively thin barrel, and creating a psychological impact on enemy forces who could identify the weapon at a glance. The shield added 14 ounces to the overall weight, but transformed the weapon's appearance from sporting implement to purpose-built combat tool. The effective range was 40 yards. Optimal range was considerably less, approximately 25 yards, where pattern density remained tight enough to guarantee multiple hits. This was a trench-clearing weapon designed to dominate the tactical environment where most infantry engagements occurred in the Western Front. Beyond 50 yards, the pattern spread exceeded 6 feet, and individual pellet energy dropped below reliable incapacitation threshold. Production began in March 1918. Estimates suggest between 19,000 and 21,000 units were produced before the armistice, though exact numbers remain disputed due to Winchester's practice of using existing civilian serial number ranges. The uncertainty adds to the weapon's mystique, but the conservative estimate of 19,000 represents enough weapons to equip roughly 1% of the American Expeditionary Force at peak strength. The first documented operational use occurred in late April 1918 during the German Spring Offensive. Units of the 2nd Infantry Division received initial shipments. The immediate reception was mixed. Soldiers accustomed to the precision of rifle marksmanship initially viewed the shotgun as crude. That assessment lasted until the first engagement. Sergeant James Morrison of the 23rd Infantry later wrote that the weapon changed the nature of trench raids from knife work to execution at distance. Now, let us examine how the Model 1897 compared to what the German and British forces were developing. The Germans fielded no equivalent weapon during the war. Their closest analog was the Bergmann MP-18 submachine gun, introduced in late 1918. The MP-18 fired 9mm pistol ammunition at a cyclic rate of 400 rounds per minute from a 32-round magazine. It offered superior sustained fire and effective range to 75 yards. However, its penetration characteristics were inferior to rifle rounds, and its complexity made field maintenance difficult. Production reached approximately 35,000 units, but most arrived too late for significant combat deployment. The British approach centered on the Lewis gun, a light machine gun chambered in standard rifle cartridges. The Lewis offered devastating suppressive fire but weighed 28 pounds, required a two-man crew for tactical mobility, and its barrel would overheat after extended fire. It was a squad support weapon, not an individual's close quarters tool. In the confined brutality of trench warfare, the Model 1897 was in a category of its own. It required no crew, functioned reliably in conditions that disabled precision weapons, and delivered overwhelming point-target effects in the engagement ranges where most combat actually occurred. If you are finding this interesting, a quick subscribe helps more than you know. Now, let us examine how this weapon performed when theory met battlefield reality. The first sustained operational use came in the summer of 1918 during the Aisne-Marne offensive. One documented account describes Sergeant Fred Hollowell of the 5th Marine Regiment during the assault on Soissons in July. Hollowell's squad was tasked with clearing a German communication trench that connected two defensive positions. Intelligence indicated 6 to 8 defenders. The trench was 4 feet wide at maximum, with multiple sharp turns that prevented enfilade fire from rifle. Hollowell entered carrying the Model 1897, his squad providing cover from the trench lip above. At the first turn, he encountered 3 German soldiers at approximately 12 feet. He fired twice before any of them could bring weapons to bear. The engagement lasted less than 4 seconds. All 3 targets were incapacitated. Hollowell continued through the trench, encountering 2 more defenders at the second turn. Same result. The squad cleared the entire position in under 3 minutes with 0 friendly casualties. The after-action report noted that traditional rifle and bayonet clearing would have required at least 10 minutes and likely produced multiple casualties. A different tactical environment produced equally dramatic results. In the Meuse-Argonne offensive, Private Thomas Rienzi used the weapon during a night raid on German positions. Rienzi's account, preserved in unit records, describes approaching a machine gun nest from a flanking position at approximately 20 yards. Conditions were near total darkness, with intermittent star shell illumination. Rienzi fired 4 times in rapid succession at the illuminated positions, then withdrew before German reinforcements could respond. Post-battle examination revealed the machine gun crew had been completely incapacitated, and the gun itself had been rendered inoperable by multiple pellet strikes to the cooling jacket and feed mechanism. The most unexpected application occurred during the breaking of the Hindenburg Line in September. Lieutenant Robert Keller's platoon encountered a German bunker complex that had withstood artillery bombardment. The entrance was a reinforced aperture, approximately 3 feet square. Rifle fire and grenades had failed to neutralize the position. Keller positioned himself at the entrance and systematically fired the weapon's full load into the confined space. The supersonic crack of pellets ricocheting off concrete surfaces created acoustic trauma effects beyond the direct projectile impact. The position surrendered immediately. Investigation revealed none of the defenders had been directly struck, but the acoustic and psychological effects in the enclosed space had been overwhelming. The psychological impact on German forces was substantial and well documented. By August 1918, German intelligence had identified the weapon and issued tactical guidance to frontline units. The guidance acknowledged that engaging American troops equipped with grab-and-gore trench shotgun at ranges under 30 meters should be avoided when possible. Forward observers were instructed to identify units carrying the weapons and prioritize indirect fire on their position, and this represented a significant tactical adaptation, diverting resources to counter a weapon that equipped less than 2% of American forces. The most telling evidence of psychological impact came from diplomatic channels. In September 1918, the German government filed a formal protest through neutral Swiss intermediaries, claiming the shotgun violated the laws of war by causing unnecessary suffering. The protest specifically cited the weapon's effects as being similar to shrapnel and therefore inappropriate for use against personnel. The American response, drafted by the Judge Advocate General's office, noted that the German military routinely employed flamethrowers, poison gas, and serrated bayonets, all of which caused substantially more suffering than buckshot. The protest was rejected, but its existence confirmed the weapon's effectiveness. Nations do not file diplomatic protests about ineffective weapons. The weapon meant to clear trenches ended up serving as a door-breaching tool, a counter-sniper weapon in urban environments, a guard weapon for prisoner handling, and even an anti-aircraft weapon against low-flying observation aircraft. Its versatility stemmed from the fundamental ballistic principle. Multiple projectiles created multiple hit opportunities. The door-breaching application emerged in urban fighting during the final advance into Germany. Sergeant William Patterson of the 42nd Infantry Division documented using the weapon to destroy door hinges and locks on reinforced buildings. The concentrated pattern at point-blank range could remove a door from its frame with 2 shots, compared to the multiple minutes required for manual breaching or explosives preparation. This capability became standard doctrine, with shotgun-equipped soldiers leading urban assault teams. One particular model, 1897, now sits at the National Infantry Museum at Fort Moore, with visible damage to the stock and heat shield from sustained use. The weapon's service record, displayed alongside it, documents used in 17 separate engagements across 4 months. The stock shows impact damage, consistent with being used as a blunt weapon when ammunition was exhausted. This physical evidence demonstrates the weapon's durability under conditions that would have disabled a more complex mechanism. Soldiers had complicated relationships with the weapon. Initial reception was skepticism mixed with mild embarrassment at carrying what many viewed as a farmer's implement. That assessment evaporated after first use. The weapon developed the unofficial nickname trench broom among American forces, acknowledging its room-clearing effectiveness. The nickname carried dark humor, as a broom is a cleaning implement, and the weapon certainly cleared spaces of opposing forces. Physical complaints were legitimate and frequently documented. The recoil was substantial, approximately 15 foot-pounds compared to 12 foot-pounds from the Springfield. Sustained firing caused bruising even through thick uniforms. The pump action could pinch fingers if operated carelessly. The weapon was loud, producing approximately 155 decibels at the shooter's position, compared to 140 decibels from standard rifles. In enclosed trench systems, this created temporary hearing disruption for the operator. Troops joked that you could always identify shotgun operators by their bruised shoulders and the tendency to shout conversations even hours after engagement. The humor masked genuine occupational hazards, but soldiers continued volunteering for shotgun duty. Effectiveness trumped comfort. The Model 1897 disappeared from frontline service by 1920 as the military demobilized and returned to peacetime force structure. Most weapons were returned to storage or sold as surplus. Some were transferred to military police units and prison guards, where their close quarters effectiveness remained relevant. But its legacy extended beyond its service life in measurable ways. 19,000 units represented 19,000 positions, where a single soldier could dominate a tactical space that previously required squad-level firepower. In the trench systems of the Western Front, that meant 19,000 potential engagement points where American forces possessed overwhelming close-quarters superiority. The mathematical impact was disproportionate to the weapon's representation in the force structure. The weapon proved fundamental principles that shaped military thinking for decades. It demonstrated that specialized weapons optimized for specific tactical environments could be more effective than general-purpose weapons with broader capabilities. This lesson informed the development of submachine guns, specialized carbines, and eventually the modern assault rifle concept. The weapon validated the principle that engagement effectiveness mattered more than theoretical range in determining tactical outcomes. More fundamentally, it taught commanders that warfare was not an engineering problem with optimal solutions, but an adaptive system where pragmatic tools that soldiers could employ effectively outperformed sophisticated systems that required ideal conditions. The Model 1897 functioned when covered in mud after minimal training under the worst conditions imaginable. That reliability proved more valuable than any performance specification. The doctrine changes were concrete and lasting. Post-war analysis by the infantry school at Fort Benning emphasized the importance of matching weapon characteristics to actual engagement ranges rather than theoretical capabilities. This analysis directly influenced the specifications for what would become the M1 carbine in World War II, a weapon explicitly designed for close quarters effectiveness rather than long-range precision. The weapon did not revolutionize warfare, no single tool ever does, but it dominated the specific tactical environment for which it was designed. 8 pounds 2 ounces, officially classified as obsolete sporting equipment, practically redefined what effectiveness meant in trench warfare. It proved that warfare is not decided by the weapon with the longest range or most sophisticated mechanism, but by the tool that solves the tactical problem a soldier actually faces. Close quarters dominance is a word for a very specific moment. In that moment, when distance is measured in feet and time in heartbeats, there is only what works immediately and what arrives too late. The Model 1897 worked immediately every time.